In the superhero line of work, the afterlife is only a few steps away. But not for these guys. Mr. Immortal possesses the ability to automatically resurrect and heal from any fatality that he ever suffers. The resurrection usually occurs immediately, and it appears that it stopped him from aging completely. He has recovered from being blasted, squished, losing air to his lungs, being crushed, blown up, infected, losing his head, blasted by radiation, and incinerated. The Death Urge, who Mr. Immortal grew up with, has stated that Mr. Immortal is fated to be alive to see the end of the universe, eventually being the sole survivor of the universe. Then, at the end, he would learn the quote grand secret that will reveal itself at the end of all things. It's later revealed that this grand secret is merging with the sentience of the cosmos, surviving beyond the end of time, and moving on into the next iteration of everything, just like Galactus does. Franklin Richards is also said to have this same destiny, but according to the one below all, Franklin is the quote appointed prince, and Mr. Mortal is merely Franklin's backup, just in case Franklin happens to pass away. Number 9. The Eternals. Way back in the day, the Celestials came to Earth when proto-humans began to emerge, meaning around 2 to 5 million years ago. That's a long frickin' time. The Celestial first host performed genetic experiments on those early humans, resulting in 3 groups: the Immortal and Superior Eternals, the pretty grotesque and monstrous Deviants, and just plain Jane regular humans like you and me. The Eternals, aka Homo Immortalis, were basically created to defend the planet Earth, specifically from the Deviants, and to serve the Celestials. They became somewhat silent defenders of Homo sapiens, secluding themselves and rarely directly engaging with us. They built super impressive cities like Olympia, Titanos, Oceania, and Polaria, and their names have become intertwined with heroes throughout ancient history, and they are all immortal, being reborn if they ever actually bite the dust, hence the Homo Immortalis name. An average Eternal is intertwined with cosmic energy and can lift about 15 tons without using any form of telekinesis, but a few are able to lift up to 100 tons. Other Eternals specialize in different powers like telepathy and telekinesis, and all Eternals have the ability to join with one another to form the Unimind, made of light, mind, and just pure energy. Number 8. Nightcrawler. Kurt Wagner was first introduced in Giant-Sized X-Men #1 in April 1975 with the mutant ability to biophysically displace himself into the Brimstone dimension, travel through it with a subconscious sense, and then return back to our dimension in a different location. Essentially, teleporting. Now this all happens so fast it's almost instant, and it's always accompanied by the signature BAMF sound. Through his unique physiology, he gains a few extra abilities as well, like a prehensile tail, microsuction hands and feet, flexible bone structure, and he can also camouflage himself, bending light using the Brimstone dimension. But what a few might not know is that he is actually immortal, thanks to the fact that he sacrificed his soul in heaven to come back to life. This means he cannot be taken out by any natural means, and if he was taken out by anything else, the mutant resurrection protocols got him covered too, which is good because I never want to lose this legendary blue mutant. Number 7. The Thing. Ben Grimm's first year roommate in university just happened to be this brilliant young scientist by the name of Reed Richards. These two became best friends. After the two graduated, Ben joined the Air Force, becoming a pilot and an astronaut. Now, helping out his buddy Reed with a prototype spaceship, Ben volunteered as its pilot. And alongside Reed, Susan Storm and her brother Johnny Storm, the four were bombarded with radiation and they all gained superpowers. Of all of them though, Ben drew the short end of the stick, with his skin becoming orange and rocky, turning him into an extremely durable and extremely strong, monstrous thing. On the other hand though, Ben was now the only member of the Fantastic Four who gained immortality, being unable to age at all. Eventually, thanks to Johnny Storm, the Thing did get the ability to return back to his human form, but only once a year. This is the only time that he actually ages, and it's only by 1 day every year. If he chooses not to become human that year, then he does not age 1 day. Basically, the Thing will live for a very long time, if not just forever. Number 6. The Hulk. The gamma-powered green Goliath known as the Hulk has been around for a long time, and ever since he showed up there are only a small handful of people who have ever been able to stop him without using some kind of magic or reality warping. His infinite strength has a lot to do with that, a strength that grows based on his anger and has never ever really reached a cap, allowing him to destroy entire planets, be a threat to the entire galaxies, and being able to shake the entire multiverse with his punches. It also has a lot to do with his basically limitless dynamic durability, which has allowed him to survive attacks from enchanted weapons, powerful blasts of energy, stronger than ground zero nuclear explosions, the Human Torch's Nova Blast, and he could stand up to forces that could crush adamantium and destroy entire planets. We already knew that the Hulk persona would come out to stop Bruce Banner from ever passing on, and that the Hulk himself is practically unable to be damaged and heals very quickly if he is, but now, thanks to Immortal Hulk, we know that the Hulk actually, literally, cannot cease to live, coming back from the below place through green doors anytime he does happen to just bite the dust, which is never. Number 5. Ares. As the son of both Zeus and Hera, Ares is the Olympian god of war. Now, unlike a lot of others on this list, Ares has acted as a villain from time to time, which you would expect from a god of war. He's tried to conquer Olympus several times, usually being stopped by his half-brother, who we will talk about in just a moment. Now, growing tired of Zeus's rule, Ares retired from his position in Olympus and made his way to Earth to raise his son Alexander, aka Phobos, who is also immortal. His first real heroic Marvel moment came when he returned to Olympus to face Amatsu Mikobashi, the Chaos King. Since then, he has actually joined up as one of Iron Man's Avengers, even staying on the team when Norman Osborn took over. Eventually though, he kind of passed away at the hands of the Sentry, who ripped him in half, but he just went straight to Elysium, only to return as a fighter in the Contest of Champions, and after that, he went back to Earth and became one of the champions of Europe. Somehow though, he was taken out by the Punisher fairly recently, but he will probably absolutely return, as he is a god. Number 4. Hercules. Hercules is the son of Zeus, Skyfather and supreme ruler of the gods of Olympus, and Alcmena, a mortal woman who lived over 3,000 years ago. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, arranged for her father Zeus to have a half-mortal son to be the world's champion. Zeus seduced Queen Alcmena, pretending to be her husband, King Amphitryon, and Alcmena gave birth to baby Hercules. Now, as an adult demigod in ancient Greece, Hercules achieved worldwide fame, best known for his 12 labors. As the Olympian god of strength, Hercules' strength is unlimited, making him one of the strongest and most powerful heroes in the Marvel Universe. As an infant, he was breastfed by his stepmother, Hera, queen of the Olympian gods, which increased his already demigod physiology to godlike levels. Hercules possesses the superhuman physical attributes of an Olympian god, but interestingly, some of his powers are superior to the vast majority of his race. But like all of them, he's immortal. Number 3. Snowbird. Narya's origins trace back to ancient times when the Inuit gods of the north battled the mystical great beasts for the fate of the world. Ultimately, both parties were exiled from Earth, and as such, the Inuit gods sought to create an agent to prevent the beast's return. To that end, Nelvana, goddess of the northern lights, mated with a human. With the midwifery assistance of Sarsi mystic Michael Two Young Men, Nelvana gave birth to a daughter, Narya. Two young men bound the infant to the lands of Canada, allowing her to assume human form. However, she would weaken if she left Canada's borders. Two young men raised the rapidly maturing Narya as his own daughter, and both were soon recruited into Alpha Flight as Shaman and Snowbird. And Snowbird, being a god, like Hercules, is immortal. Number 2. Monkey King. A crime lord self-styled himself as a modern-day, quote, Monkey King. He was tricked by a rival into attempting to steal the original Monkey King's staff. Now, in the cave where the staff was held, he encountered the spirit of the original Monkey King, Sun Wukong, who, impressed by his audacity, let him take the staff and at least some of the original's power on the condition that he would be judged. If he was good, he would be allowed to go free, but if his heart was weighed down by evil, he would be cast down into the 8th city of hell. Now, being a crime lord, he was judged evil. He was cast down where he was trapped for years and years and years until one of the hammers of the worthy that was created during the original sin created a hole that allowed many demons, including himself, to escape. Having seen the error of his ways, he now dedicated himself to trying to atone for his past deeds and hunting down any other demons that also escaped alongside him, with the powers of immortality. Number 1. Deadpool. With powers originating from Wolverine's genetic mutation, only stronger, Wade Wilson, aka Deadpool, is a product of the Weapon X program, making him not only pretty difficult to take down, but also pretty difficult to defend against. But through his time, he's managed to become even more capable. At one point in the comics, Deadpool becomes infatuated with Death, as in Mistress Death. This is the same Death that the Mad Titan Thanos is also in love with. Now, because of this little weird love triangle and Thanos being a big grumpy jealous boy, he decides to quote gift old Wade Wilson with immortality, meaning preventing him from ever being able to fully be with Death. In reality, he just vowed to return Deadpool to life no matter what it took if he ever managed to actually pass away. Coming from Thanos, that's pretty much the same as immortality, because Thanos is Thanos and he will do whatever he wants to do. But even without that, Deadpool's healing factor renders him basically immortal as he no longer ages, can live and control his body without his head attached, is highly resistant to foreign chemicals, immune to all diseases, telepathic attacks, and possessions. He's a master assassin and has the power of breaking the fourth wall, which in a way gives him almost godhood-like abilities in comic books. Coming in at number 10 today, it's the Sentry. With the power of 1,000,000 exploding suns, Robert Reynolds the Sentry is not just another Marvel version of Superman. In my opinion, he is even cooler than Superman. The Golden Sentry Serum gave Robert Reynolds more than just the highest level of strength in the universe, the ability to move and fly faster than the speed of light or just teleport, and near invulnerability. The Sentry also has molecular manipulation abilities that have allowed him to defeat the Molecule Man, photokinesis, which allows him to shine brighter than the sun itself, turn completely invisible, and produce blasts of light from his hands and eyes that could burn the Hulk's skin and level whole city blocks, psionic abilities that he uses to hold himself together, implant his memories in others, erase minds, and stop the hammer of Thor, biokinesis abilities that have let him heal others, resurrect himself, reconstitute his molecules, and as the Void, give others cancer. Speaking of the Void though, that is a whole other dark side to this hero that is intrinsically tied to his existence, which is not only incredibly powerful in its own right and makes the hero 10 times more interesting, but when Sentry combined with the Void, this godlike being somehow got a power boost, and he even became a Horseman of Apocalypse, which did the same thing. Number 9. Adam Warlock. First appearing in 1967 in Fantastic Four number 66, Adam Warlock was created by the Enclave, who were experimenting to create a perfect human specimen. This made him super strong, durable, fast, and able to store and use huge amounts of cosmic energy to make him fly, release blasts, and all kinds of things, including cocooning himself to help him heal and regenerate. As it turns out, that last one is kind of the thing that makes him unstoppable. Every time he cocoons and regenerates himself, he actually comes out more powerful than when he went in and evolves even new powers. With the name Warlock, you'd assume that he can also use magic, and you would be right. He is able to use, quote, quantum magic, which lets him teleport, make force fields, move at the speed of light, create wormholes, resurrect himself and others, have cosmic awareness, and frighteningly manipulate, remove, and judge the souls of others. He has altered the evolution of beings, he's manipulated matter, turning Thanos into stone, and then he wielded the Infinity Gauntlet, and is one of the main wielders of the Soul Stone specifically. This guy is basically Space Jesus, and one of his biggest feats is completely embarrassing the hell out of Mephisto, Marvel's most powerful demon in his own realm. At one point, he accidentally defeated the entire universe, including all cosmic entities except the one above all, who then just recreated reality with Adam Warlock as the new living tribunal. He's nuts. Number 8. Blue Marvel. A former Marine and scientist turned superhero, Adam Brashear is not only one of the strongest heavy hitters in Marvel Comics, but he is also one of the smartest characters and one of my absolute underutilized favorites. His origins take place in the 1960s during a project to use antimatter as an energy source. Adam and his best friend Connor were caught in an explosion that turned Adam into a living, stable antimatter reactor, which should, in theory, be pretty much impossible. This power is insane. To put it into perspective, 1 gram of antimatter contains the same energy as the device dropped that ended World War II. 1 droplet could power the entirety of New York City for a full day. Using this power, he was capable of effortlessly lifting the 1960 era's American warship Enterprise, which weighs over 93,000 tons, and then he just flew it all the way back to America. He effortlessly moved a meteor the size of Arkansas to save the world. The Watcher said that Adam is capable of splitting the moon in 2 with a blow, and he was able to directly engage Iron Man, Ares, Wonder Man, and Miss Marvel at the same time in combat, and just casually overpower them, and then he turned around and pushed the Sentry to the limits of his strength, and then knocked him into Earth's orbit with a single punch. His durability has allowed him to survive a hydrogen device going off literally in his hands and just walking away unfazed. He may be seemingly relegated to the background of Marvel Comics, but Blue Marvel is practically unstoppable. Number 7. Thor. Thor, Odin's son, the Asgardian god of thunder, is one of the most powerful heroes that Marvel has. Whenever anyone talks about Avengers level threats, one of the key elements of that is whether Thor can just handle the situation on his own. In both the comics and the MCU, Thor and the Hulk are repeatedly given reasons to not be able to show up so that certain storylines can actually be compelling. Specifically, I'm talking about Civil War, where Thor had to deal with Ragnarok back home on Asgard, and that was all because if he was on Earth during Civil War, whoever had him on their side would just automatically win. Being the son of Odin, the Allfather, and Gaia, an elder god, Thor has all the incredible powers of the Asgardians, but boosted to a whole other level thanks to his mother. As the god of strength as well as thunder, he is one of the strongest Marvel characters, like I said, being able to either defeat or stalemate astronomically strong beings like the Midgard Serpent, the Hulk, the Silver Surfer, Gladiator, and Hercules. His stamina lets him basically fight forever, and he is next to completely invulnerable. Not to mention his weather and energy manipulation and the use of his hammer. Even when he isn't in possession of his hammer though, and is just Thor Odin's son, he is still a force to be reckoned with, and, especially recently, he keeps getting more and more boosts to his power, like when he was Rune King Thor, or now that he is Allfather Thor, which gives him the Thor Force, and he's gone beyond even that when he became the Herald of Galactus. There's more to Thor, but I think I've said enough. Number 6. Captain Marvel. Whether you love or hate Carol Danvers, there is no denying that this energy-wielding superhero is an absolute powerhouse. Carol was the head of security at NASA when she was accidentally subjected to the Psyche Magnetron machine, which imprinted her with energy from the superhero Mar-Vell's Kree Negabands, which gave her superhuman strength that allowed her to support the weight of a dead Celestial, super stamina that lets her exert herself for over 24 hours without getting tired, superhuman durability to withstand planet-destroying explosions, superhuman agility and reflexes that are next to instant, and a regenerative healing factor that exceeds Wolverine's and can be extended to others. She has self-propelled flight at 3 times the speed of sound, even in the vacuum of space, and flash precognition that allows her to randomly subconsciously anticipate the moves of her opponents. But all of that is somewhat secondary to what is arguably her main power, the ability to control, absorb, and manipulate energy of a whole bunch of different kinds, which extends to let her project her spirit, manipulate molecules, transmute matter, create energy constructs, and even boost up her already OP abilities. There is literally no denying that Carol Danvers, Captain Marvel, is straight up just broken. Number 5. The Hulk. It's almost a requirement that the Hulk show up on this list. The gamma-powered Green Goliath has been around for a long time. time, and ever since he showed up, there are only a small handful of people who have ever been able to stop him without using some kind of magic or reality warping. His infinite strength has a lot to do with that. A strength that grows based on his anger and has never ever reached a cap, allowing him to destroy entire planets, be a threat to entire galaxies, and being able to shake the entire multiverse with his punches. It also has a lot to do with his basically limitless dynamic durability, which has allowed him to survive attacks from enchanted weapons, powerful blasts of energy, stronger than ground zero nuclear explosions, the Human Torch's Nova Blast, and he could stand up to forces that could crush adamantium and destroy entire planets. But now, thanks to Immortal Hulk, we know that the Hulk actually literally cannot die, coming back from the below place through green doors. Actually, in that story we even get to see an alternate future where the One Below All uses the Hulk to destroy literally everything in existence. And the Hulk is still showing more and more of his potential with the reveal of the Titan personality that was able to fire energy blasts and is utter nightmare fuel. Number 4. Deadpool. Yes, he's an anti-hero, and no, I don't really care. With powers originating from Wolverine's genetic mutation, only stronger, Wade Wilson, aka Deadpool, is a product of the Weapon X program, making him not only pretty difficult to take down, but also pretty difficult to defend against. But through his time, he's managed to become even more capable. At one point in the comics, Deadpool becomes infatuated with death. As in Mistress Death. This is the same death that the Mad Titan Thanos is in love with. Now, because of this little weird love triangle and Thanos being a big grumpy jealous boy, he decides to, quote, gift old Wade with immortality, preventing him from ever being able to fully be with death. In reality, he just vowed to return Deadpool to life no matter what it took if he ever managed to pass away. And coming from Thanos, that's pretty much the same as immortality. But even without that, Deadpool's healing factor renders him basically immortal, as he no longer ages, can live and control his body without his head attached, is highly resistant to foreign chemicals, immune to all diseases, telepathic attacks, and possessions. This guy is a master assassin and has the power of breaking the fourth wall, which, in a way, gives him almost godhood in comic books. Number 3. Ghost Rider. While the Ghost Rider is in control, Johnny Blaze only influences its decisions to an extent, as he takes the, quote, back seat. Now, Doctor Strange has stated that Johnny Blaze is simply a mortal and acts as a built-in safety, limiting the power of the Ghost Rider or the Spirit of Vengeance. Doctor Strange also stated that when the Spirit of Vengeance takes possession of the Ghost Rider's powers are, for all intents and purposes, boundless and, quote, godlike. So not only is the Ghost Rider really cool, but he's quite a hardy fella. He's essentially impervious to almost all forms of normal damage, or the damage he has sustained, like having his head completely obliterated, didn't actually matter since he just instantly reformed and didn't even feel it. The Ghost Rider has tanked hits from the Hulk on multiple different occasions and was one of the main heroes called in when Hulk returned for his vengeance on the Illuminati in the World War Hulk story. Since his body becomes a flaming skeleton, most projectiles just kind of pass straight through him or bounce off of his incredibly strong bones. The only things that have been shown to actually hurt him are heaven-forged or blessed weapons. Also, because of the divine or demonic energies that empower him, he can basically feel no fatigue or pain of any kind. And if anything were to actually damage him, he can recover from his injuries pretty much instantly. But all that combined with his Hellfire, soul, and sin manipulation, demonic magic, a somewhat fallible penance stare, and other insane abilities after becoming the king of hell itself makes Ghost Rider someone who most villains and heroes fear even on their best days. Number 2. Scarlet Witch. As a natural conduit of one of the most powerful forms of dark magic, chaos magic, the Scarlet Witch, aka Wanda Maximoff, is one of the most terrifyingly powerful beings in Marvel Comics. Using her chaos magic, Wanda has the very powerful ability to alter reality, which she has used to create her own children, bring the Avengers to their knees, even completely ending a few of them, and even rewrite all of reality to make mutants the dominant species for a while before before wiping a ton of them out. When she was born, Wanda had a natural affinity for magic. This was boosted up by the gift, or curse I guess, of chaos magic given to her by the elder god Chthon. And this was then boosted up again by the experiments of the High Evolutionary at Wundagore Mountain, which gave her an even deeper connection to magic. She can channel energy from other dimensions and from entities like Chthon, Sidorak, and Morrigan, and is considered to be the nexus being of the universe. Most magic users could make this list, but few of them can do what the Scarlet Witch can do. Number 1. Jean Grey. There's a reason that Jean Grey was chosen as the favorite host of one of the most powerful cosmic entities in the entire Marvel multiverse. As an Omega level mutant with not only telepathy but telekinesis as well, Jean Grey is one of the most powerful mutants alive. She is the most notable, powerful, and skilled telepath in the entire Marvel universe with seemingly limitless potential. Her telekinesis allows her to manipulate matter and energy, creating impenetrable force fields and moving objects with her thoughts. This combination of telepathy and telekinesis grants her incredible versatility in combat and problem solving. Jean's unparalleled strength lies not only in her powers but also in her fierce determination and unwavering sense of justice. Her ability to tap into her full potential, stay level-headed under pressure, and make split-second decisions makes her virtually unstoppable. But then, she actually is unstoppable, proven by the fact that even without the Phoenix Force, she has been able to bring herself back to life through her abilities and her sheer force of will. Despite facing countless adversaries and moral dilemmas, Jean Grey's indomitable spirit and strength of character have solidified her position as one of the most powerful and iconic figures in not only the X-Men mythology, but in Marvel Comics in general.
In at 10, Thanos. While usually portrayed as an evil, bent villain, many stories have depicted Thanos as having just a twisted moral compass and thinking that he's justified in whatever he's doing. The character's perhaps best known role came in the 1991 storyline of the Infinity Gauntlet, which was the culmination of several previous story arcs, like in the MCU, just in the comics, because you know they came first, which saw him successfully assembling the 6 Infinity Gems into a single gauntlet and then using them to kill half the universe's population, including many of its heroes, in an effort to earn the affection of Mistress Death, the living embodiment of death in the Marvel Universe. Yeah, that's right, Thanos wiped out half the universe in the comics to bone Death. Although these events were later undone, it still just proves that never underestimate the power of horny.
Number 9. Uranos. Uranos is one of the coolest new villains we've gotten over at Marvel Comics. Sure, he isn't new in the sense of him being someone who just came out this year. He resurfaced back in 2021, rising to prominence in Kieran Gillen and Asad Rabish's Eternals comic book series, which was honestly short-lived. It was so good. But Uranos actually first appeared in a much smaller capacity back in the B story of a What If issue. What If issue number 24 from 1980 is considered his first appearance, despite it being a What If issue. He is obsessed often with destroying and eradicating all life, believing in contrast to most Eternals that the Celestials would be best served by the Eternals if both the humans and the deviants of Earth were destroyed.
In at 8, Galactus. Galactus is the sole survivor of the 6th incarnation of the multiverse. Originally, Galactus was a humanoid named Galen, born to the previous incarnation of Earth 616 on the planet of Ta, a paradise-like world whose civilization is said to have been the most advanced of any known universe at the time. However, the 6th Infinity and all its universes were in their final stages of collapse due to the multiversal renewal cycle, being consumed by the abstract entity known as the Black Winter. When the cosmos was going to meet its natural end, Galen was then approached by the embodiment of the 6th Infinity, the sentience of the multiverse. Basically, he was approached by Kevin Feige, who merged its essence with the mortal of Galen and creating the new multiverse, but also creating Galactus, the Devourer of Worlds. Yeah, I mean, the dude survived the universe, the multiverse resetting, so if that's not gonna stop him, I don't know, maybe Squirrel Girl will, by talking him down. Can't believe that that's a thing, maybe he shouldn't be on this list. But anyways, he possesses immeasurable power, like the power cosmic, and is just one of the most powerful beings in the Marvel Universe, having near limitless godlike power, and being considered an omnipotent entity. Dude's just mega OP if he hasn't eaten enough worlds, kinda like me.
Number 7. Hela. Hela is literally the goddess of death. How are you gonna stop that? She might not be the only one, but hey, that doesn't really matter. Either way, she has a sway over life, and that oftentimes cannot be beat. Even when Hela herself seemingly was destroyed, she actually returned, and for a while she was also teaming up with Thanos, which is an insane power couple that I don't think the world was ready for. I would still be interested to see what could happen with these two if they were truly both at the top of their game while being fully united on the villainy front.
In at 6, Mephisto. Yes, Mephisto is actually in this list. Your theories were right this time. Mephisto, an extra-dimensional demon, presides over a fiery pocket dimension he refers to as Hell, or Hades. However, it differs from the actual Christian concept of Hell, which is governed by Pluto in Greek mythology. Like Hades is governed by Pluto in Greek mythology. It's a separate thing, okay? Mephisto strategically labels his realm as Hell to capitalize on the belief of, you know, God, the devil, all of that stuff. So he's creating himself in the illusion of just absolute evil, which is, yeah, it's a good marketing strat. It's like the Blair Witch of demon marketing. His appearance typically resembles just a traditional demon, but it remains uncertain whether it's actually what he looks like or if this is just something that he throws on when he's going to the ball because, you know, he's like, oh yeah, I'm the devil, so I'm gonna look like a devil. He also accepts names that are just contributed to being devils, you know, like Mephisto is derived from Mephistopheles in the Faust legends and stuff like that. Just basically anything you want to call the devil or any name you have for the devil, he accepts. He's chill like that. But the freaking devil? Yeah, if history has taught us anything, you can't really stop the devil. The devil stops you.
Number 5. Apocalypse. When it comes to X-Men villains, Apocalypse is one of the best around. Definitely one of the most inevitable. Sure, right now he's more on the side of good because he's been unified by the cause that is known as Krakoa, the mutant nation, but I'm just waiting for the moment that he moves once more from an ally to an unbeatable villain. When it comes to Apocalypse, part of the reason why he is so hard to defeat comes from the fact that his mutant ability alone makes it nearly impossible to do so. Apocalypse basically has evolutionary sort of powers that allow him to adapt to almost any setting, bolster his strength and durability over time. His inherent ability allowed him to control his body at an atomic level when we're talking about his pure mutant ability, allowing him to adjust his body as needed depending on the circumstances of the fight that he's in. Add in the fact that his powers have been augmented by celestial technology over time, and the fact that he's also fully absorbed two different techno-organic viruses into himself, with his body overpowering and fully encompassing them into his own makeup. And yeah, you can see why he makes our cut. Oh, did I mention that Apocalypse also has a long history with magic? Because that's also a thing now in the comics.
In at 4, Carnage. When the Venom symbiote came to rescue its host Eddie Brock from jail, it left an asexually produced offspring behind. That spawn then bonded to Cletus Cassidy, who was a renowned serial killer in the Marvel Universe, through a wound in his hand, merging with his blood and becoming red and black in color. Now going by the name Carnage, Cletus returned to, you know, being a serial killer, but this time with superpowers. Yeah, he's a recurring enemy, and quite the deadly one at that, okay? Eventually Carnage fought Spider-Man, and Spider-Man was defeated, realizing that Carnage was just another symbiote though. He called on Venom to help, and then they were able to defeat him. But like still, okay? He had to get his enemies to help to defeat Carnage. That's weird. Spider-Man later also used loud noises to defeat both of them, but like that's just kind of a cheap shot in my opinion. But thanks to Cletus' psychopathic tendencies and the fact that he was created on Earth, he has more abilities than his father. A lot more. Like the ability to shoot projectiles out of his hands and then forming like razor sharp weapons on his hands to tear through innocents and enemies with chef-like precision, I might add. Yeah. Plus, Carnage can't be killed with fire, so that's definitely a vote in his favor. The dude's a serial killer who got superpowers. Yeah, that's pretty freaking unstoppable, and he's a fan favorite. Plot armor.
Number 3. Dark Phoenix. Probably the worst villain around and one of the most powerful ones out there has to be Dark Phoenix. The Phoenix Force is an interesting character entity because when it operates in a hero role, it's actually one of the most powerful forces of good in the cosmos. But with the ultimate power of the Phoenix also comes the temptation to lose control to it and turn dark. When this does happen, you are looking at a power that is epic enough to end all worlds and threatens to bring the very universe to its knees. Really, it all lies in the host that the Phoenix Force takes. The cosmic entity itself is really neither good nor bad on its own. But once someone becomes corrupted by its darker side, good luck trying to stop them or control them. In most cases, you have to hope that the Force either leaves the host of its own will and moves on to someone else, or that the person chooses to sacrifice themselves to protect others and regains enough control to even be able to do that.
But ultimately, in at number 2, Green Goblin. Speaking of how many times will they come back from the dead, after gaining heightened strength, intellect, and regenerative abilities thanks to the formula that he took to become a goblin, Norman Osborn survived being impaled by his glider, but you know, no one knew. Escaping the morgue, he concealed his identity and evaded capture to flee to Europe. And then he comes back, because of course he does, he's freaking the Green Goblin, and then his secret gets exposed to the world. But despite this, he ends up getting captured and imprisoned, but then manages to escape again. And then during the last jailbreak, S.H.I.E.L.D. apprehended him near France and then returned him to his highly secured cell now, initially held in the raft. Norman continued to grapple with the goblin in his brain, but he ends up escaping again. You know the drill by now. He was secretly moved to a special containment center where he encountered the father of Colmere, but like, come on, okay? He ends up escaping every single freaking time because he's the Green Goblin and he's Spider-Man's like most famous villain and he's like the most iconic one. So yeah, they're not gonna kill him off or they're not gonna permanently stop him because he's such a money maker. Are you kidding me? Half of the people who went to see No Way Home went to see No Way Home because of the Green Goblin. You know I'm right.
Number 1, Juggernaut. I mean, come on. It's in the name. I have to include Juggernaut on this list. While he might not have the ability to fully control and manipulate the atoms that make him up like Apocalypse, or to warp reality like the Phoenix Force, and he might not be quite as iconic as someone like the Green Goblin, I would still consider him to be the most unstoppable villain around, considering he is literally known as the unstoppable Juggernaut. That being said, lately in the comics, Kane Marco has actually been turning over a new leaf, but this also goes to show how unstoppable he is, not just in his body, but also in his mind. With him setting out to become more of a heroic figure and even rebelling against Sidorak, who he was once the avatar of. Kane has become so unstoppable, not even Sidorak can control him now, with Kane using materials that Sidorak left on Earth to forge his new armor. As such, Juggernaut is no longer Sidorak's agent tied to his will, but instead is actually free to choose his own path. As a villain though, Juggernaut also still happens to be one of the hardest villains to beat, whether he's linked to Sidorak at the time or not.
Number 10, Nightcrawler. The teleporting son of Mystique and Azazel. He's such a cool character. I mean, fans adore him and it's not hard to see why. He has an intriguing backstory, but also his powers are visually very cool. One of the cool things about Kurt is that he technically can't die. His mutant ability doesn't really let him age, so depending on how he lives his life, it could be forever. Now, I should mention that he has died before, but he ended up returning. I mean, that's the life of being an X-Men, I guess. He's consistently putting himself in danger so that, they can protect people. You never know what day will be your last. But it is the comic world, so even if he dies again, I'm sure he will find a way back. Again. Number 9, Hope Summers. Hope Summers is the adopted daughter of Cable, aka Nathan Summers. Now, during the Avengers vs. X-Men event, once they managed to extract the Phoenix Force from Cyclops, she was able to harness its power, which in turn made her essentially immortal. She was then known as the White Phoenix for a little while, and worked with Scarlet Witch to help restore the mutant race after it was almost completely wiped out a few years prior. Number 8, Mystique. Earlier on in this list I talked about her son, Nightcrawler, so it should come as no surprise that Raven would also be on this list. Now, Raven is a shapeshifter. She can transform her body into anyone, and that comes with a lot of perks. One of them being she essentially can't die. Mystique is said to be over 100 years old, but you would never know because she can be any age she wants to, essentially. Of course, she is not immune to being killed in any other types of ways, but she's extremely resourceful, so I would not bet against her. Number 7, Psylocke. Psylocke is a mutant with a telekinetic ability. She has become quite popular over the last few years, even making a jump into the comic book movie world in X-Men Apocalypse. Now, she has been no stranger to death in the comics. In Extreme X-Men, she was killed by the villain known as Vargas. She then was brought back to life by her brother Jamie. But that's not all. She then died again in the Hunt for Wolverine series, but of course, she didn't stay dead for that long. She was powerful enough to bring herself back this time, proving once again that not even death can keep her down. Number 6, Apocalypse. Technically, Apocalypse is said to be immortal, yet he has been defeated and killed a few different times. But that hasn't stopped him from returning again and again and again. Number 5. Franklin Richards. Franklin is the son of Reed Richards and Susan Storm, better known as Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman. But the crazy thing is, Franklin is a mutant, and a super powerful one at that. Seriously, he's considered to be an Omega level mutant. Even Galactus has said that he's the most powerful mutant ever born. And coming from Galactus, that's a big deal. Pun most definitely intended. Even alternate versions of him are powerful. There's a version of him from Earth 12665 that actually took down 2 Celestials and became immortal. I mean, I can't imagine what Reed and Sue must think. Franklin is also the main source of conflict in the new Fantastic Four X-Men series. If you have time, I would definitely recommend picking that one up. Number 4. Professor X. Charles Xavier technically died during the Avengers vs. X-Men event series, but years later he made his triumphant return to the land of the living. Just not in the way we all expected. I mean, we knew he would return eventually, but just not like this. Turns out when he was killed by Dark Phoenix Cyclops, his consciousness was found by the Shadow King, and basically he was trapped in an astral plane for what felt like hundreds of years. But he eventually found a way to escape and possess the body of Phantom X. And he wasn't going by Professor X anymore. He now wanted to be called X. So that's how Xavier came back. Number 3. Jean Grey. Jean Grey and Death have a tricky relationship. When she was harnessing the Phoenix Force, nothing could really kill her, but she did end up dying and coming back, both in the comics and the films. The funny thing is, the film version is actually more confusing than the comic version. X-Men movie continuity is, well, super confusing, to the point where fans have now just accepted that it's just messed up and will never be fixed. Like, Days of Future Past was supposed to fix everything and even brought Jean back. But then, the past storylines changed it yet again with the release of the new Dark Phoenix film. My head hurts even thinking about it. But regardless, Jean dies and she comes back. She never stays dead. Number 2, Deadpool. Wade Wilson. Can anything kill him? Well, yeah, kind of. He has died a couple of times in the comics, and briefly in the movie Deadpool 2. But he does end up coming back. I mean, he's a hard person to kill. He has an insane healing factor that basically protects him from anything, similar to Wolverine. But that hasn't stopped writers from trying to end the Merc with the Mouth story every now and again. For example, in the film Deadpool 2, he does die briefly because he saves a kid and wants to be with Vanessa. But of course, it's not his time, and not only does Vanessa feel that way, but Cable as well, who ends up time traveling to save him. Man, what a cool friendship they have. And then, of course, Wade gets a hold of Cable's time travel device and causes a whole bunch of mayhem on the timeline, even stopping Ryan Reynolds from playing Green Lantern and the ending of X-Men Origins Wolverine. Number 1. Wolverine. Wolverine is a very interesting one. Known for his adamantium claws and healing factor, Logan is basically the definition of unkillable. He has survived countless opponents and events over the years that should have killed him but didn't. He's been blown up and completely regenerated, although he did die during the Death of Wolverine storyline, but he didn't stay dead forever. Logan returned, proving that no matter what happens, he will always return. Although he did die during the 2017 film Logan, which was just an amazing movie, but that's more because Hugh Jackman was, retiring from the role and they wanted to give him a fitting exit, which they did.
Now, while it's still disputed as to whether or not Deadpool is an official member of the X-Men, but his involvement with Colossus and the fact that he's actually stayed at Xavier's school is enough for us to include him on this list. With a healing factor that would make Wolverine jealous, Deadpool puts his immortality to full use in not only the films, but the comic books as well. Aside from the multiple suicide attempts, Deadpool has been the victim of decapitation and dismemberment several times. People such as Carnage, the Hulk, and even Wolverine have all done their best to separate the Merc from his mouth. The story of how Deadpool gained his immortality is really interesting though. When Thanos discovers that Wade is in love with the literal personification of death, Thanos curses Deadpool with the inability to die, just so the two can't be together. Thanos was so jealous of Deadpool he accidentally made him immortal. In at number 9, Archangel. The story of Warren Worthington coming back is a little bit of a strange one, but regardless, it's an X-Men death and rebirth, just not the rebirth that we were expecting per se. In the storyline, when the Archangel personality takes over Warren and actually attempts to take over the role of Apocalypse, the rest of the X-Force gets pretty worried, and rightfully so, I should add. Anyone who wants to become Apocalypse should be watched closely, but a threat like that for the X-Force meant they needed to terminate Warren. And at the end of it all, it's Psylocke who delivers the execution by stabbing Warren with the life seat. All Ultimately, this kills the Archangel, although not for long. As the team is retreating, they spot Warren trudging through the deep snow, except now he's been returned to his original form. However, it's not the same old Warren by a long stretch. This version was almost a blank slate. When he was stabbed with the life seed, it completely erased everything that Warren knew before his death. Later on, this more pure version of Warren is merged again with the Archangel clone, which may be seen as a technicality for some, but for us it's pretty much a resurrection of the original. In at number 8, Nightcrawler. Kurt Wagner's story of rebirth is really touching and speaks to the genuine character that Nightcrawler is. During the Second Coming storyline, Nightcrawler and Rogue were alone fighting against Bastion. Both of their intentions were to protect Hope Summers from the Super Sentinel, and as such they laid it all on the line. When Rogue went down, Kurt attempted to teleport her to safety, yet in the moment that he was about to do that, Bastion stuck his hand through Nightcrawler. So when they arrived on Utopia, he just had Bastion's hand sticking out of his chest and as a result slowly died from his injuries. But when Nightcrawler's soul rose to the heavens, he still continued his good deeds, helping them drive out evil whenever it reared its ugly head in the oasis of heaven. When Kurt's father chose to abuse their connection to attack heaven, Kurt took the opportunity to rematerialize his body back to Earth. But as a result, he had to turn over his own soul. Sure, he was able to return to the land of the living, but now he will never be able to return to heaven. In at number 7, Gambit. Gambit has always been one of my favorite X-Men characters, and therefore I was as happy as can be to mention that the Raging Cajun just won't stay down. In the 2012 17 issue Gambit Solo, the finale saw Gambit perfectly pulling off a prison riot which brought together not only his target, but the British intelligence MI13 and the Uncanny Avengers. As you can imagine, these groups coming together created quite the mess, and while his friends were picking up after him, the heroes actually lost track of the mob boss. The target ended up getting his hands on a gun and delivered a fatal shot to the head of Gambit. With Gambit now lying dead in the arms of Rogue, a member of the MI13 used the magic of Excalibur to reconstruct Gambit's blown apart head, which ended up bringing Gambit back to life and offered up a terrific line of dialogue where Gambit says, "Why do I feel like the day after Mardi Gras?" That's what Mardi Gras feels like. I don't want to go. In at number 6, Jubilee. Jubilee's death and rebirth stories are perhaps some of the coolest storylines out there. Her storylines have seen the hero die more often than the rest of the X-Men characters, but the first was perhaps the most unforgettable. After the House of M, Jubilee and many of the other X-Men had their powers basically turned off as they were captured by the Purifiers. Without their powers, they became easy targets for their enemies. The Purifiers beat them relentlessly and ended up crucifying them on the front lawn of the X Mansion. Talk about a grudge. By the time that help arrived, they were all essentially dead. However, when Wolverine carried Jubilee to the sub-basement of the X Mansion and gave her a blood transfusion from Angel, the restorative properties of the blood brought life back into her. In at number 5, Rogue. After the events of Avengers vs. X-Men, Rogue fully believed that the Scarlet Witch was going to cast another spell, so she decided to take care of it herself. To do this, she absorbed Wolverine's powers and ran through the Avenger with her new bone claws. Although what she didn't see coming was supervillain the Grim Reaper sneaking up behind her and stabbing Rogue in the back. Her death, while lasting for a few months, was eventually reversed when the Avengers went back in time to stop her first attack on the Scarlet Witch. Classic Avengers just turning back the clocks whenever they don't like when something plays out. Either way, it brought Rogue back into our lives, so I guess it's cool. In at number 4, Colossus. The story of Colossus dying and then coming back to life is every bit tragic as it is remarkable. When Peter's brother died, he felt it was his duty to find the cure for the legacy virus. Although the only way to make the cure airborne was to have the cure injected into a living person for whom it would ultimately kill. Colossus though decided this was a sacrifice that he needed to make and chose to inject himself with the cure. This is also the moment that Colossus went from looking human to altering his state into that steel form that we saw him as in the Deadpool films. Years after the run of Astonishing X-Men, a cure of the mutant disease was being developed, but all the X-Men knew was that it was being tested on an unknown subject. When the X-Men arrived to investigate, they soon find out that Colossus has been alive this whole time. He was being held against his will in an underground bunker, and a clone had been put in his place, which would be easy to do if you look like a robot. In at number 3, Cyclops. Scott Summers has actually died twice, but the first was more so the end of the life that he had known up until that point, Allow me to elaborate. During the 12 storyline, Cyclops had become a host for Apocalypse. Apocalypse at it again. And after being freed by the tyrant, Cyclops believed he was dead from the whole thing. But it was only that part of him that had died. Thankfully, Jean and Cable were able to remove Apocalypse from their friend to restore him back to his normal state. Well, as normal as can be. In the second death of Cyclops, we have to jump to Secret Wars 2. These strange mist clouds at the time were kind of floating around, and they were there to sterilize and ultimately kill the mutants all around the world. And one of its victims was Scott Summers. In a recent time travel storyline though, a younger version of his son Cable used a pinch of the Phoenix Force to turn the tides on Cyclops' fate. This ultimately resurrected his father and allowed him to crawl out of his grave. In at number 2, Jean Grey. The death of our beloved Jean Grey has been teased several times throughout the comic books. It gives us a heart attack every single time. But the real death came at the hands of a Magneto clone. A former X-Man himself actually poisoned Jean with a hefty dose of electromagnetism. Although because Jean had fully merged with the Phoenix Force, she was able to bring herself back several times. One of the more important cases of this remanifestation was in the Avengers vs. X-Men storylines. Jean returns to save a power-hungry Cyclops from perishing and also finally makes her full return using the Phoenix Force. However, in the end, she decides to reject this cosmic force and live the rest of her life without it. Lastly, on our number 1 spot, Wolverine. As I mentioned before, Wolverine has some pretty crazy regenerative abilities, but when the miniseries titled Death of Wolverine was released, we all feared his abilities wouldn't be enough this time around. In the miniseries, Logan's healing properties were weakened by a virus, and word of his now diminished state spread rampant throughout the villain community and essentially put a big target on his hairy back. After discovering who was responsible for the virus, Wolverine was covered in this molten adamantium, and as the metal hardened, poor Logan ended up suffocating to death. Although other versions of him remained, this particular Wolverine was resurrected with the help of an Infinity Stone. In the hunt for Wolverine, a group of Reavers track down Logan's body, and what they find though is just the hardened shell of Logan with nothing inside. You see, the X-Men were able to extract his body from the statue using Kitty Pryde's phasing powers. His body was actually buried somewhere else, but we soon saw him alive and well holding the Space Stone for some reason. Little to no explanation as to how exactly he crawled out of the grave, but nonetheless we're happy to see him again.
Number 10. Vision. Obviously from the comic verse, MCU Vision died hard. Twice. Vision first debuted in the Avengers number 57 in 1968. Vision was created by Ultron using the brain patterns of the hero Wonder Man, and is first dubbed a synthezoid before he adopts the name Vision. Janet Van Dyne, aka the Wasp, calls him this upon seeing him for the first time. Now Vision has a wide array of powers, such as being able to accrue mass, manipulate density, fly, phase, which he can use to cause great pain by sticking his hand through people, which he does. Now Vision isn't immortal in your typical sense, but rather by design. His body is a casing for his consciousness, and just like Ultron, it can be shed and moved over to another, especially now that he's made up of millions of nanobots, a swarm. Vision's been out of commission before, but he never stays gone for too long. Okay, listen, so many people have died and come back, it's a staple at this point, and as you know, Kelly blames this on the death of Superman. Number 9. Gilgamesh, the Forgotten One. An Eternal, he shares the same vulnerabilities as the rest of his ilk, which render the majority of them essentially immortal. Essentially. Gilgamesh debuted in Eternals 13 in 1977, so let's dive into how he can be virtually immortal as they call it. Once reaching adulthood, Eternals stop aging. They also become immune to all known diseases. Gilgamesh also has a non-vulnerable body. Dense, protected, able to withstand bullets and falls, and even cosmic energy. Also extreme temperature, which is important. How embarrassing would it be to win an epic battle and then promptly freeze to death? What a headline. However, all of this boosted physicality is achieved through mental discipline that allows him complete mastery over his own body. And that means his concentration can be broken. Break it and he's open to being hurt or killed. So, villains, hooray, there's a chance. Number 8. Hercules. Hercules first appeared in Journey into Mystery number 1 back in 1965 and was initially set up as a rival of Thor's. Hercules is of course inspired by the figure of Grecian myth, despite the fact that they call him by his Roman name. A common occurrence, just look at Disney. I guess Heracles just doesn't focus test as well. Hercules is the strongest of the Olympians and possesses all the abilities you would imagine that entails. Super strength, speed, reflexes, the whole 9 yards. He is also said to be immortal, though he has sacrificed his godly powers, which of course changes things. Hercules actually had a compelling discussion with Vision about the nature of immortality and what a double-edged sword it truly is. So hey, upping Vision's immortality cred. Hercules is here and not Thor because, well, he doesn't just die all the time. Okay, all the time is an overstatement, but for an immortal, Thor has died a fair bit. He's actually found himself in some fun Reddit threads with titles such as Immortal Until Killed. Only in comics would that title be so accurate. Number 7. Firebird. Firebird first appeared in the Incredible Hulk Volume 2 number 265 in 1981. Born Benita Juarez, as a child she came into contact with a radioactive meteor fragment, which we all know in comics only means powers, and oh what powers. This radiation caused her to be able to generate heat, flames, and fly. Believing her powers to be divine, she named herself after a mythical bird. Now Thor firmly believes that Firebird is immortal. She is immune to radiation and poisons, as well as demonic possession, always a concern. She can also survive in space and can deflect most physical attacks with her own pyrokinesis. So why does Thor think she's immortal? Well, because she has survived 2 specific attacks that only he could have survived. Although I mean, how good is his cred? He died. Now, getting out of questionable territory and onto firm ground, here come the true immortals. Number 6. Ex Nihilo. This character is very recent, debuting in 2012. Yes, that's recent. In Avengers Volume 5, Number 1, Ex Nihilo is a gardener, which is a robotic species created by the Builders. As a result, he has the ability to create and modify existing life, all the way up to a planetary scale. His focus, obviously, organic life. He is a gardener. He was only taken out after the entire Marvel Universe collapsed. So yeah, it takes an event of that scale. You're immortal then. Other so-called immortals are getting knocked over by non-universe ending events. Not Ex Nihilo. Number 5. Captain Universe. With the caveat, when it's possessing a member of the Avengers. So Captain Universe is actually what the person is called when they are possessed by the Unipower, which is an extra-dimensional force that renders the host cosmic. As Captain Universe, the person is still them, just imbued with the power and also a universe-themed costume that goes over their own. This power comes from the Enigma Force, and no one's quite sure about it really, but they speculate it comes from the Microverse. This power can and has attached itself to anyone, from normal people to those who are already well endowed with power, like Doctor Strange. While possessing the power cosmic, the bearer is, well, they're pretty much invulnerable. Side note, how good is that What If where Peter gets to keep the Captain Universe powers? He's essentially Dr. Manhattan. So the Uniforce. Your costume is far too optimistic, but the phenomenal cosmic power more than makes up for it. Number 4. The Hulk. Now for years it was a question, is the Hulk immortal? What's the scoop? Well, thanks to the Immortal Hulk, we can finally say yes, he is, and it's horrifying. Especially since it's the Hulk that's immortal, not Bruce Banner. So yeah, this concept has been played with before in the story Hulk the End, released in 2002, wherein the Hulk literally finds himself to be the last person on Earth, even outliving Banner. This leaves the Hulk to bitterly lament that he truly is the strongest there is, cause he is the only one there is. Depressing. Immortal Hulk gets pretty dark too, especially as every time the Hulk returns, he resurrects Banner, who dies at the end each time. Just yikes. This is not fun immortality. This is gamma radiation gone wrong immortality. It's really depressing to think that the Hulk is just doomed to suffer forever. Number 3. Wonder Man. Wonder Man is not on enough of our lists. He used to be so pivotal, and now you'll find people who are like, who's Wonder Man? He first appeared in the Avengers number 9 back in 1964, and we can finally firmly say yes, he is immortal. Although he didn't know this right away. He only learned this when he traveled to Hades and was fighting some heavy hitters down there, like Mr. I Want Your Mare's Mephisto and the Grim Reaper. His immortality is thought to be present because of the ionic treatments that granted him his powers in the first place. Actually, he got his powers because of Baron Zemo. His immortality is actually pretty funny, because initially it looked as though he had died in his first appearance all the way back in issue number 9, and he actually didn't reappear until 1972. But he wasn't properly revived until Kang the Conqueror got him a new body in 1975. So he came into his immortality late, as it were. Number 2. The Sentry. Robert Reynolds. One of the Marvel Universe's most successful retcons. Robert Reynolds, as Sentry, first appeared in the year 2000 in Sentry number 2. His story began when the average or rather mundane man, Bob Reynolds, woke to remember he was a superhero with the power of 1 million exploding suns. But not only had he not remembered this until that very moment, but no one else did either. It turns out this is because he is also host to a powerful entity known as the Void that needs to be kept suppressed at all costs. Reynolds' story is actually a depressing one. At times he wants to die but can't. He's too immortal. His power is too vast. He jumpstarts himself every time. The power of all those exploding suns. He's also also able to kill most characters just with one blow as Void. Void is the dark side of his powers. Part of his immortality is that his molecules exist ahead of the current timeline, so he exists in the past, the present, and the future all at the same time. Too much power. Too much. Number 1. Mr. Immortal. It's right there in the name, and it's true. No false advertising here. Mr. Immortal, aka Craig Hollis, first debuted in West Coast Avengers Volume 2 number 46 in 1989. So again, the how of Craig's immortality is not a happy one. He has been watched over since infancy by the entity Death Urge, because of a dying last wish of Craig's mother's. However, Death Urge proved to be a negative influence on his life. I mean, go figure with a name like that. And he even encouraged him to do bad things. However, it was after the suicide of Craig's girlfriend and Death Urge's refusal to take him too that Craig learned he couldn't die, after numerous unsuccessful suicide attempts. Eventually, Craig decided to put his powers to use as a hero, even adopting a bit of a catchphrase, "Dying is what I do best," which sounds good but is actually a lie. Dying is what he does worst. He does appear to die if his injuries are bad enough, but that's just an appearance. He usually comes back to life in at the longest 10 minutes. It's also involuntary, so no mental control necessary. He's not as powerful as most of the people on this list, but he has the most genuine claim to immortality. Simple, straightforward, in the name, and true.